All right, we are live on LinkedIn. I'm super excited about today's conversation about the importance of emotional intelligence in the workplace, which is important in the technology boom that we're in right now, in our current economy, current society, but specifically when we talk about the workplace and business. So I'm super excited to be here today with my colleague, Andrea. And so as we jump in, we'll start off with intros and then we'll just jump into the conversation. If you are watching and if you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the chat. Or leave them in the comment box below. And then also, if you would love to join our community of young professionals, especially if you're a consultant, feel free to leave your contact info in the comments and we'll definitely reach out and follow up with you. But Andrea, I'll let you introduce yourself first and then I'll intro myself and we'll jump right in.
Sure. So my name is Andrea Kelley. I am a innovation and strategy consultant, and yeah, I really love helping people, helping organizations. I love just really diving into strategy, diving into the problems and the issues and all of the things that's going on, so that we can create better systems and all of the things. So, my background is in data analytics, business development, and coaching. I started off doing coaching for entrepreneurs and young professionals, and now we are into the consulting space. So, I'm super excited about this new space. Sonia has been great in helping me navigate it. So, yeah, we're
Love
here.
that. Yeah, it has been so great to not only to meet you. I know it's only been a few weeks since we met, but I think it's been so phenomenal to be connected with you and have a peer in the space who just understands just where things are and where things are going. Especially when we talk about the future of work, because that's such like a abstract concept for a lot of people. So it's really fun being able to have those conversations with you. As for me, of course, my name is Dr. Sonia Daniels. I am the founder, owner, and lead consultant at S. Daniels Consulting. My firm is a strategy and talent development firm with a focus on future of work. And so that's so relevant for where things are right now in the business world. AI has really shifted the way that organizations function and also how people function too. And I think what's been interesting about the development and integration and adoption of AI is that it's also kind of forcing our hand as humans and how we show up in the work that we do. And so today's conversation is so relevant about emotional intelligence because emotional intelligence, I think, oftentimes is kind of looked at as like something that's not necessarily important in the workplace, but it's a nice to have. But from my perspective as a consultant, emotional intelligence should really be a part of organizations' business strategy, especially when we talk about. I hate to say like man versus machine when it comes to AI, but AI can only do so much. And so now I think we're at a critical time where emotional intelligence will also be just as important as the development of different technology tools. And so that's what we'll be talking about today. So, you ready to jump into our conversation?
Let's dive into this.
I'm gonna let you go.
So, when it comes to emotional intelligence, even in my experience as being a young professional myself, um, I've come to realize that a lot of leaders, a lot of people who are in positions of power, they don't necessarily lead with people first in mind. Sometimes businesses are heavily driven and heavily focused on monetary, compensations and things like that, that the focus and attention goes to that. It doesn't necessarily go to the development of people. And if it does, it's very technical. It's very skill driven, but it's not emotionally driven from a place of developing mindset, developing communication skills, developing just internal processing of that employee, that person. We see a lot of things just happening in the workforce where even taking PTO time is a problem. Even
Mm,
taking a mental health day is an issue because efforts are not centered on the people. It's not centered on the employee, the well-being, I should say, of the employee.
mm,
So I think that right now we are seeing a shift. We are seeing that people are being bombarded with work. They're being bombarded with, AI, technology, all of the things. And some people are returning to the workforce after not having a job for so long
mhm,
and coming out of that mental disparity, coming out of that lack, coming out of not having a job for 6 to 12 months,
mhm.
going back into the workforce. I think that emotional intelligence should definitely be something that is focused on just to get that employee back on track. Right. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I love that. So let us do this because I always like to start off with kind of like laying a foundation for people, not
Mhm.
to make the assumption that everyone knows what we're, exactly what emotional intelligence is. So from your perspective, can you actually define how you view emotional intelligence and especially like from a perspective of like emotional intelligence in the workplace? Like how do you define that?
So for me, emotional intelligence is really a skill set,
Mhm.
but it's also the ability to be able to discern your feelings, understand and articulate your feelings, but also the feelings of others. So to be able to understand what it is that you feel, what it is that you're thinking, and just to be very self-aware of that as an individual, it takes work, it takes a lot of skill, it takes focus. If you're, talking about development and, just growing as a human being, emotional intelligence, having that skill is a real great thing to have. But as it pertains to workforce, I think emotional intelligence can um it kind of gets like confused in a way because it's like self-awareness and emotional intelligence, it's like intertwined, but it's not exactly the same.
Mhm.
So being self-aware of your environment, being self-aware of other people's emotions, emotional intelligence teaches you how to act on what it is that you feel. It's
Mhm.
not just enough to be self-aware, but emotional intelligence has the tools and the equipping to be able to deal with what it is that you are feeling and discerning.
Mhm. Yes, I love that, and I agree with you. Um, and so to add to that, I think what's interesting, and I think you might have mentioned this, is that I think sometimes when in the workplace, especially when we talk about like leaders and decision makers, and sometimes people in like our C-suite, our executive positions, I think sometimes that there can be a gap in terms of like the language when it comes to like emotional intelligence and how it is integrated into the workplace, right? So like this morning, when I was like prepping for our conversation, I was thinking through like what are some of the ways that like companies actually utilize emotional intelligence but maybe like don't make the connection between what it is and how it functions. So like the thought process or the concept of customer service came up to me, right? And so
Mhm.
when I was thinking through the idea of customer service, I'm like customer service is essentially like the structure that allows people to engage in like utilizing their emotional intelligence in the workplace. So I
Mhm.
think about, for example, like going through a drive-through. I was talking with somebody about this the other day. Might have been you. I don't know. I was talking about how Taco Bell now has like the AI.
Mhm.
When you go through the drive-through, there's an
The
AI
voice.
that
Yeah.
takes your order instead of like an actual human person. But I think about places like Taco Bell, McDonald's, who always kind of like are the butt of people's jokes when it comes to their lack of customer service. But customer service itself is a practice of emotional intelligence. Is how
Mhm.
you are actually able to relate to people, right? So I always find it funny when like I go through the drive-through at certain places and like they don't even say like, "Oh, how are you doing?" Whatever the case is, they're like, "Go ahead with your order." And I'm like, wait a wait a minute. Like we there's a gap in emotional intelligence here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of being able to like know how to utilize like empathy in certain situations, or knowing how to use like critical thinking in certain situations in the workplace. So I found that connection funny when I was thinking about it this morning. Um, but I think emotional intelligence is necessary in all aspects of work, especially because one, in a traditional 9 to 5 setting, people spend 40 plus hours of their time at work every week, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so it means that you're around people so much that there has to be a priority around human relationships. And a lot of that, and a lot of the relating to people is built on a foundation of how do you, and of course, to your point, how do you navigate your own emotions? How do you understand your emotions? But then also, how do you use your emotions as information in the workplace to help you understand like what is happening with you, even if it's something that has been like triggered by somebody else, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think it is important that emotional intelligence is better understood in the workplace, but also like used as a business strategy for companies. I think a lot of how like when people are not happy at work, they are not innovative or productive. And that
Mm-hmm.
actually cuts into companies like ROI and their revenue, because then people are just not producing in the way that their job might need them to. But I think another aspect of that is that when people are not happy at work, there's an increase in absenteeism, which is also a metric for companies, right, as well. And so I think about there are things that I think sometimes there's a disconnect in the way that like emotional intelligence is understood within the workplace. So that was my little rant.
A great rant. Love it.
Hey,
But let's break it down.
yes.
So even in customer service, if people understood that customer service is directly tying to helping somebody,
Mhm.
I'm helping you get to a certain place in this company or a certain place in your own process. So there
Mhm.
is an approach that I have to give to you. And most people don't realize that you are practicing empathy. Like, for example, I worked for DCFS, the Department of Children and Family Services, before.
Mhm.
And it was one of my first ever like customer service roles. But I was dealing with people who were getting divorced for the first time and they had to, get on food stamps and they had to get like child welfare. They didn't know how to deal with that. So having to call in when you are emotionally unstable just to get information. And it's
Mhm.
not like I'm the person that's going to be handling your case. I'm just
Mhm.
a bridge. But in those situations, I understand, okay, this person, they're explaining themselves to me. They're basically not trauma dumping, but they are loading me with all of these emotions. I have to be consciously aware that as someone in this position, I have to be able to guide them to where they actually need, but I also need to be able to be empathetic.
Mhm.
I can't be, and then it's also the understanding of like my job. I'm supposed to do this. I'm not supposed to, use foul language. I'm not supposed to, be dismissive because I will get written up for that. There
Mhm.
are consequences to not being empathetic or not being in a position or a posture of having emotional intelligence, whether you realize this is me being emotionally intelligent or not. But I think customer service really teaches you how to be empathetic towards people's needs, and then going back into like um leadership and workforce. I don't think that leaders are self-aware of, or there's not a priority of what goes on in your household.
Mm.
There are people that come to work and they try to do their job, they try to do this, they try to do that, but their parents are sick,
Mhm.
They've become caretakers.
Mhm.
They are having issues with their children. Things are going on outside of work. And
Mhm.
to come to work and have to fake it and not be met with empathy, not be met with some type of strategy, not be met with some type of resource
Mhm.
is it causes a strain on the employee. It
Mhm.
doesn't make them feel welcomed, it doesn't make them feel seen. And to spend 40 hours a week at this place, this environment where no one's checking in on you, or there's not like any resources available to help you cope with what it is that you're going through,
Mhm.
it signals a red flag to employees. It's like at this point, why do I even show up here? Why do I even come here? Like I can go to somewhere else. And this is where you start to see turnover.
Mhm.
This is where you start to see, oh, well, I went to my boss and I asked for some PTO time. I was met with pushback.
Mhm.
Okay, well, let me go somewhere else. Let me put my 2 weeks. For some reason, we think like that's the answer. Well, let me put my 2 week notice in and go somewhere else
Mhm.
with this thought, I need to be treated better. Going to another job isn't necessarily a solution, but I
Mhm.
think employees are becoming more aware of their own emotions and they're looking for the workforce to help them in that area.
Mhm. I agree. Oh my God, you made so many valid points from like so many different perspectives. Because one of the stories I always share with people was that around the time I started my business, which was actually, I'm gonna say, the catalyst for me starting my business. I was working at a nonprofit. This was in 2016, and in that year, I had a series of personal events happen, all outside of my control. One of them being the flood in Baton Rouge, and so it was like around November. I had got pulled into the ED's office, and basically they asked me to quit because they felt like I wasn't being productive. And I thought that situation was so ironic because I worked at an organization that was set up to be able to help people who were in vulnerable situations. And then yet, I was being asked to part ways with the organization because I wasn't showing up the way I guess they felt like I needed to. And don't get me wrong, I understand I had a job to do and a role that needed to be fulfilled. But at the same time, it's like I'm still a human. And there's still, things happening in my life. And so I think for the longest, I felt dehumanized because I wanted to be met with empathy and that wasn't offered to me. And so for me, that was the moment in my career where I decided that nobody would have that type of control over me as an employee. And
Mhm.
so the next year in 2017 was when I literally filed the paperwork for my business. And I was like, I'm going to figure this out because one, I didn't want to be in a situation because life happens, right? I'm
Yeah.
sure that's not the first time I've dealt with life, and it's not gonna be the last time I've dealt with life. I think that's just the nature of being a human. But at the same time, it's like I also knew I wanted to grow a company where I can employ people and they
Mhm.
wouldn't have to experience those things. And so I've been really blessed in my own business when I did have a full staff to be able to give people paid maternity leave and be able to give them unlimited PTO and let people breathe and live life. And I promise you, by being able to offer people those things, when I did have a staff, they were not only productive, but like just innovative in what they could offer in their positions. And so I think to your point, or not even think, but I know because I've experienced it, is that the traditional workforce as it exists right now has completely diminished how it needs to be able to function with humans as like people, right?
Mhm.
Um, and I think to your point, what's been really interesting, you mentioned that a lot more people are starting to better understand their own emotional intelligence, and then the workforce hasn't quite caught up to that yet. And so, what I think will be really interesting, I would love to see a study if there's not already one, but I would love to see a study on how many people would rather not work than to work at a company who cannot provide them with what they need as just like people, right? I know one of the things that I believe we're going to start to see more of in the next few years, and we're probably seeing it right now, is more of a gig economy where more people are choosing to work for themselves and freelance to just have that autonomy to be able to work on their own accord and not have to work within the constraints of like a company or corporation. And so I think that's going to be interesting too, because that also holds fire to companies to say, hey, people would rather work for themselves and figure it out contract by contract as opposed to like being stuck. I don't know a better word, but as opposed to being stuck within like the traditional workforce. So I'm curious about that too. But I know that was my catalyst for starting my consulting firm. So I think that's just where we are right now.
Turnover.
Yeah.
It's a issue, and most companies that I've seen, their solution is to just hire somebody else. Their solution is just to put out the RFP. It's to just, well, I don't want an employee. I don't want this. I don't want that. So let me look into contracting. Let me look into this. It's like they're going about it with strategy, but it's not the right one.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you think about AI is trying to replace humans.
Mm-hmm.
But if a company wants to grow and scale, they have to be able to utilize AI, but train people on how to use it. And like I said earlier, the focus of these companies are not on the people.
Mm-hmm.
It's on the revenue. It's on the issues that's going on in the business. They don't yet see that emotional intelligence is a need.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just replace them. Let's just put some AI into this. Let's just hire an AI consultant to come in and shift everything, right? But to your point, that's why I started my business too. Constantly going to jobs, and also what contributes to employees like turnover and quitting and starting their own businesses also is a lack of development in their career, a lack of fulfillment. That brings on emotions that some people don't know how to handle.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm in a role and I'm getting paid very well, but I don't have a mentor, I don't have a coach, I don't have my leadership coaching me into, fulfilling my full potential, I'm going to leave. I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
go somewhere else. And if I seek that in the organization and I'm met with resistance or pushback or really rejection, that I'm going to internalize that differently because I spend the majority of my time here. I'm around people all day, every day. The emotional connection to leaders also, I feel like that's going away. If you can't reach your leader, if you can't get them on the phone, if you can't get a one-on-one meet, if you can't schedule a one-on-one meeting with your leader and you're going through something, you want to talk to them because it is affecting you emotionally, but your productivity. If I can't even speak to my leader on a one-on-one, not even personal basis, but a one-on-one basis, like I'm stuck. What do I do?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people also, to talk about emotional intelligence, there are a lot of talk and conversations about employees being fearful of going to HR.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm going through this in my life. I'm having this problem with this other employee. I'm having a problem with my leader. I'm afraid to go to HR and speak on this because I'm afraid of the repercussions. I'm afraid to lose my job. So I'm gonna stay quiet. I'm gonna stay stuck. I'm gonna stay hidden in this place,
Mm-hmm.
all the while feeling all of these emotions, trying to be productive, trying to give the company what they want.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not making any progress in this role. So I think when we talk about workforce and we talk about integrating emotional intelligence, it has to start with leaders first.
Mhm. Oh, I agree with that. And I agree with it because essentially at the end of the day, leaders model the culture of the organization. It's just, I mean, that's just the reality of it. It's no different than how parents model how their children will act in the world, right? So you can give your kids all these rules, but like if you're doing the complete opposite, they're going to do what they see you do, not what they hear you say. And so it's no different than like at a company where it's like, yes, you can tell your employees, like, this is what our culture is and this is how it should function. But as a leader, if you're not modeling that culture, the employees are going to do exactly what the leader is doing. And that kind of creates a lot of tension within the workplace as well. And there were so many other good points you mentioned, especially like around the AI piece too, because yes, AI is a useful tool. I believe AI can free up our time to where we can focus on things that we really need to be doing or want to be doing. But at the same time, AI has its limitations, right? So AI doesn't have feelings and emotions that AI can't relate to people in that capacity. And so I think that companies will need to really understand and prioritize like how do we integrate AI, but also at the same time improve not only our culture, but also the emotional intelligence of the people within the workplace. Because, see, this is what I envision happening is that with any technology revolution, so whether we talk about like Y2K in the development of like the internet,
Mhm.
if we even take it back to like the American Industrial Revolution where like all these new machines and technologies were coming out, we can take it back to when computers start when they first became a thing. And I'm old enough to remember a lot of these things. And so there are people who are always going to be, there's going to be a group of people who are going to be excited about technology advancements, but then there's going to be a group of people who are against it because it forces us to do things differently than we've been doing before. And that's kind of just like the nature of people, right? But I think the reality is when it comes to the way businesses function, there's going to be customers. So, like, for example, again, I'll go back to the Taco Bell example of like going through the drive through and there's an AI taking my order. There are going to be people who are going to be like, you know what? I don't want to go to Taco Bell anymore because I don't want a machine taking my order. But then there are going to be people who are going to be like, oh my God, I love this. I don't have to talk to a person. This is so efficient.
Mm.
I'm not gonna hold you. I was kind of conflicted because I pulled up and the AI was like, "Welcome to Taco Bell," and like we both were quiet, so it was that awkward moment of like,
What's
What do
happening?
I do next?" Like,
What's going on here? What is happening?
like, I was like, "What do I say next?" And so it was kind of funny because like I love tech, so like I usually am big into like getting new tech devices and like playing around with different tech, but like it even caught me off guard. But then I think about when I go to places like Starbucks, I like being able to have a conversation with the person who's taking my order. So it's like it can be kind of conflicting because it's like I know these things are probably useful and productive, but at the same time, it's like this is kind of awkward because it's like I just want to order my 3 soft shell tacos and like I gotta talk to a robot, you know? But I think it's gonna force companies to really start to think through like what does actual innovation look like within their organizations? Because I do believe that there are industries, like I think about healthcare, for example. AI can only go so far when we're talking about healthcare because there's a
Mhm.
huge human element of that work, right? So I
Yeah.
think there's going to be a lot of industries who are going to shift, and then there are going to be those who really have to be intentional and cognizant of what does this look like for them and what work are they doing around like new technology tools. So I feel like there's just so much to be considered, but I really feel like a lot of leaders don't know which direction to go. And I think that's the beauty of being a consultant right now is that we get to help them figure out what to consider around which direction they would be interested in taking.
I think also, and those were great points because I had the same experience at Wiener Schnitzel. I'm like, what do I do? Is this a computer? Like, is someone gonna come on? I don't know. But
Uh-huh.
I had that same experience, and it literally, I mean, even in that experience, it woke me up, and it was like, oh, it's happening. It's not just something
Right
that I read
now.
on an article. Like, it's
Uh-huh.
happening now. And when you even think about Wiener Schnitzel is in the middle of the like South Baton Rouge.
Mm-hmm.
It's not on Highland. It's not on, it's not downtown Baton Rouge where, all of the fancy buildings and stuff is. It's like it's happening everywhere, even the places you wouldn't expect, right? So that's to speak to AI, but going into like consulting, and I know you know this for a fact, when you work with nonprofits, what's the first thing you talk about? The mission.
Mm-hmm.
The goals of the company, like how it originated. I think for a lot of nonprofits and a lot of businesses, they've gotten away from that.
Mm-hmm.
They've gotten away from, oh, I started this business because I wanted to help people. I
Mm-hmm.
started this business because I wanted a people focused environment.
Mm-hmm.
They've gotten away from that. And I think as consultants, our job is kind of just to steer them back to where it was that they originated from, because that does require humility. It requires humility in how you train people, in how
Mm-hmm.
you create resources, in how you get projects, in how you communicate to your employees. It matters having that humility attached to it as a leader. But I
Mm-hmm.
think the focus is just not on the people anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's not on developing and mentoring people.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, people are difficult. Yes, people have their problems. Yes, women get pregnant. They are emotional.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, men go through divorces. They go through middle age crisis. Yes, people have issues that they deal with. But if an organization is not willing to meet those people where they are, you're going to constantly be met with the issue of having to replace them instead of develop them.
Mm-hmm.
It'll cost less to develop them than it would to replace them. Like, I'm not seeing a lot of organizations invest in emotional intelligence like coaches, bringing in consultants that specialize in emotional intelligence. I
Mm-hmm.
don't see a lot of leaders who are females.
Mm-hmm.
Women, we have a lot of emotions. We lead with our emotions sometimes, but I have not seen a female leader that was able to read a room and create a solution for it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm coming into this organization. I see that this is going on, this is going on, this is going on, and I'm going back and creating solutions for it. I'm presenting it to the leaders, but they're rejecting me.
Mm-hmm.
We're met with resistance. We're met with, oh, this is new. This is innovative. We're met with pride. We're met with, oh, I like the old way of doing things. Okay. Well, let's see what this organization, what this project, all of these things are going to look like in the next 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
I am working on a proposal right now for a nonprofit that is working on a 25-year plan.
Mm-hmm.
And when you think of what that city, what that industry is going to look like within the next 25 years, you have to consider the people,
Mm-hmm.
the people that are getting left behind,
Mm-hmm.
the people that aren't equipped, the people that aren't able to catch up to what it is that's evolving and going on right now. You have to be able to center your focus on people and the business. There should be a balance.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not seeing a balance. I'm seeing this over that, and the result is high turnover. The result is companies having bad reputations. The result is um, a lack of partnerships and just a lot of things. I think when you talk about ROI, companies definitely have to get back to centering their focus on developing people.
Mhm.
Those are the people that are going to run the AI systems. Those are the people that are going to replace you. Those are the people that are going to raise up other leaders as they move and flow into the organization. So we have to get back to developing people as a priority,
Mhm.
especially integrating training and courses and even onboarding. I feel like a company that doesn't have an onboarding system is a red flag,
That's true.
because onboarding isn't just about, oh, let me teach you how to do the job. It's also about, let me introduce you to the company. Let me show you that you are valued. Let me show you that you actually have a place in the organization.
Mhm.
It isn't just a job. We didn't just hire you because you're the token. We didn't just hire you because you have these skills or you have a degree or whatever. We hired you because of all of that. But
Mhm.
also, we want you to understand that you are making a decision to be a part of our organization.
Mhm.
That's not even embedded in onboarding. It's not people focused. It's not people centered, and that's an issue that I see.
Yeah.
Yes.
You're accurate. You're exactly on point because there's a few things I want to highlight what you said. One, I want to throw some data because I love data, so I want to throw some data in there. But I think the biggest point you talked about, which I is so important, is that so human societies operate in cycles, right? In patterns. And
Mhm.
so right now where we are is that we are although we are in a technology boom, what we will start to see over the next 5+ years is that folks technology will be so advanced and so great that yes it will be helpful, but people will start to get to a place where they're going to be like, you know what, maybe we don't actually need this, maybe it's not as productive as we feel like it is for us. So people are going to go back to like more simplified methods of how we function, right? I just read an article yesterday. I don't remember what publication put it out. It might have been like Wall Street Journal or something,
Mhm.
where a lot of adults are getting away from like smartphones and they're buying what are called dumb phones, right? And I thought that was so funny because the dumb phones are simply like the little flip Nokias that I had like when I was in high school.
Right.
And I find that to be so funny because there were a period where like if you had a flip phone, you weren't up with the times. But now people are like, I don't want an iPhone or I don't want an Android anymore. Like I want something where all I can do is make calls, maybe send a few texts, but I want to get back to like simpler ways of communication. And I just find that to be so funny that that is where we are as a society, where we're actually starting to cycle back into more simplified methods. And so while there are companies who, jumped ahead and like fully adopted I think that that is only going to last so long for them. So I think about companies like, I think it was like Adobe, Google. There were a few like major corporations who
Mhm.
did a reduction in workforce in mass of like thousands of people to replace those people with AI. Now, while that's all fine and dandy, I feel like in a few months they're going to have positions open to hire people back to recognize that like AI can't replace what a human can do. It just is what it is. Like I even think about there are times where like I might call a company and like I cannot for whatever reason get to a human. So I'll press zero, like connect me to an agent or connect me to a service rep. And like the whole time the system is like, I did not understand. Can you repeat yourself? Look, I got patience, but not too much.
Like,
If
never
I'm
mind.
called to get something resolved and you keep sending me to an AI, a automated system, at that point, I'll be like, you know what? I don't want to do business with y'all anymore if I can't even talk to a human. And so I think that perspective is interesting. But let's talk about numbers, especially because you highlighted turnover a few times. So, of
Mhm.
course, we know that there are companies that prioritize profits over people. But what I think is really interesting about that is that I find that those companies have the most waste in terms of like their financial resources within those companies. So when we talk about turnover numbers, when a company, so it costs on average about $5,000 to $10,000 to bring in a new person to the organization, right? So that's like the time it takes to market the role. Let's say if you're posting a position on like paid hiring platforms, the cost of labor for the team members who are facilitating the hiring process, and then of like of course like onboarding, training, to your point, if the company actually has a training program, which a lot of companies actually don't have training programs. So it costs on average about $5,000 to $10,000 to bring in a new employee. Now turnover usually costs about 20 to 50% of that employee's salary, right? So let's say you hire a new person, you go through the whole interview process, getting them onboarded, trained, whatever the case is, and then they get into the company and decide they don't want to be there and they quit. And like they put in their 2 weeks notice and they quit. So now, and let's say that person is getting paid $100,000. So now it didn't cost you what, 50 plus 10, it didn't cost you about $60,000 to turn over one person. So if you're a company who is constantly turning over employees, that's a lot of money being drained from the total like revenue cost and eventually like the profit that company can actually keep at the end of the year. And so I think a lot of times when the companies talk about being profit over people, they're not thinking through like what they're actually losing in the process. I think about Target, for example. I love Target. I'm not even gonna hold you. I'm an avid shopper. Yes. It's something about the lighting in Target is just always the right lumen. The air feels nice. The music is always up on. I love the shopping experience at Target. But when I think about the year Target has had, I'm like, somebody at Target did not have the forethought to think through what decisions they made and how it would affect just their profit for the company. I mean, the fact that like Target lost like what, a few $1 billion this year by simply pulling back or rolling back on a equity policy when they didn't really have to do that, right? So I even think about things beyond technology when we talk about, and that's the emotional intelligence thing, right? Equity ties into our ability to understand that humans don't always have a level playing field based on different factors that are essentially out of our control, different demographic factors, right? And so equity is when companies ignore equity, they essentially ignore being able to relate to other people, and also they ignore critical thinking, which is important in emotional intelligence, but then they also ignore just having compassion for other people. And I think that that is a challenge too. Again, when you talk about like the gap in emotional intelligence within like leaders and decision makers, that like I don't think folks understand equity beyond like surface level DEI policy. That's my soapbox. I'm gonna stand on it, but that's how I feel about those that topic.
There definitely is a gap. And when you even think about ROI and you think about all of the money that's being lost just trying to recuperate from, turnovers and things like that, I always like to imagine corporate spaces providing resources that matter. I remember being in corporations and they will have, training videos and, all of these things, but it wasn't in depth. It was just very surface level. It was very, the resources that were available were not transformative. Let's just say that. So even when you think about the gap that's missing, I think businesses definitely need to incorporate training, courses, programs, things into their ecosystem as it pertains to personal development, um, business development, things like that. Um, there is a space for companies to really hone in on that. Leaders don't have time to sit down with every employee and figure out, okay, what's going on with you? Why aren't you being productive? Why aren't you this? Why aren't you that? Like, Leaders are not therapists at the end of the day. They're not coaches at the end of the day, right? So there is a level of understanding that we as consultants and really just employees should have when it comes to leaders. But if there are resources there, if there are coaches there, somebody that you can talk to, even like contracted therapists, because now you're getting into the benefit packages of what organizations offer. I know a lot of people, they receive health care, they receive, insurance and things like that. But when I'm thinking about ROI, even now I'm strategizing, even in my own business, I'm strategizing what would coaching programs, what would offering these types of things that deal with health, mental health and personal development, what would that look like from a ROI perspective, from a monetary perspective, if companies already offered that? And they didn't need to go through this avenue, or they didn't need to do this, or need to pay for all of these benefits. What if they already had this in-house? What if they already had this available? What if they already had these resources embedded into their ecosystem? Would they need to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on this or on that? I'm thinking of innovative ways to serve the people that are already there, but also people that want to come into this ecosystem. There are infrastructure projects that are happening right now in Baton Rouge. There are so many initiatives that are going on, so many buildings, so many just new things that are sprouting up in Baton Rouge. We are now seeing a lack of what it is, skill, a lack of education within the people. And yes, they have a shift initiative, something you told me about. They have the shift initiative. They have these things that are in place, but it's focused on workforce readiness. It's focused on skill set. Going back again, it's focused on technical things. Can you do the job? Regardless of how you feel about it, regardless of the emotional intelligence part, like, it's centered on being able to have the capacity to build, the capacity to do those things, but they are missing that emotional intelligence is a part of that structure. You need leaders, and especially this is something that I saw when you get into industries like engineering and infrastructure and project management and all of these analytical things. You find that a lot of leaders are technically driven. They don't know how to relate to people on an empathetic level. They know how to talk to you about analytics and engineering things and all of the stuff, but they don't know how to talk to you about just regular conversation, being in the elevator, having a 30-second interaction with somebody. They're not equipped to do that, and that matters. It contributes to the developmental part of just the company culture. People will literally leave a job because there is no southern hospitality. There is no, like, that's a thing. And I'm seeing it all over LinkedIn. People leave jobs because they're not being poured into. And I think AI is not making it worse, but AI is kind of highlighting where the priority is, and it's making people make decisions that they never had to make before. When you think about, I think it's 300,000 Black women that lost their job or something. Most of those women are starting businesses. To be a solution to that issue, we're not just starting a business, we're starting a business so that we can now become consultants and now become the bridge to answer those issues and to really be problem solvers in this industry. And so I think that just going back to really understanding company structure, resources, going back to the drawing table. Okay, what is our mission? We
Mhm.
need to get back to that. What is our priority? We need to embed that into our strategic plan. We need to embed people into our strategic plan. Even retention has to be retention and engagement.
Mhm.
Because when I'm at work, I'm not really being engaged other
Mhm.
than providing work.
Mhm.
So even thinking about engagement and retention strategies, I think should be a priority for organizations too.
Mhm. I agree with you. And I feel like we've made such good points today. As we get to the final stretch of our conversation, I want to share kind of like what I would love to see companies do. And this is going to be very abstract, a very abstract thought process, but I want to save some time to hear your thoughts about it as well. But when I think about the future of work, emotional intelligence, and also talent development, I think what I would love to see are companies who explore new models for work, where maybe beyond the with the traditional 8-hour workday or 40-hour work week, or however companies are structured. I would love to see companies develop opportunities for their employees to essentially be entrepreneurs within the organization. And so when I say entrepreneurs, I mean that folks who have the ability to be able to kind of design what their own work looks like. To
Mhm.
where maybe they're not working a full 40 hours a week. Maybe they're working, let's say, a few weeks out of the month, right? Where they might set up their work in terms of like projects as opposed to like day-to-day tasks and activities that have to be done. Maybe just exploring different models for where people have more autonomy within the security of a company, where they still get like a steady paycheck, they still have access to benefits, but they're able to flow and work in a way that makes sense for who they are and what their lifestyle is, right? So you mentioned folks who might be caregivers or folks who might be parents, folks who might have their own health needs or whatever the case is. And so everybody's not in a position to work a traditional 8-hour workday, but maybe they have autonomy to do their work on their own time, where they're actually producing the same, if not better, outcomes or outputs, but they're not subjugated to working within like, a certain work hour, or they're not subjugated to having to commute and sit in an office all day, right? So I would love to see companies really explore having better models for people having autonomy within their role so that they can grow and flow like they need to. Again, though, that requires structure. So I'm not saying let it be a free for all, but I feel like that requires structure and strategy and a lot of forethought about what that looks like. But I feel like it's very possible. And I feel like that might be a part of like the future of work when we talk about AI development, but also like the necessity of people having better emotional intelligence and better core skill development. So I would love to be able to see companies kind of play around with that model and see how that works for their not only employee satisfaction but also like their revenue and profit as well. So I'm gonna pass it over to you for your thoughts before we wrap up.
Yeah, definitely. Everything you said was very valid too. It's actually something that I've been working on as well, as far as like services and things that I offer in Living in Pursuit, my coaching, well, consulting firm. So I have been a multifaceted person my whole life, and every job that I've been at never allowed me the opportunity to grow my skill set or grow my leadership or grow my knowledge of what the role can actually evolve into. And I feel
Mhm.
like a lot of other multifaceted creatives are experiencing that issue as well. It's as if, oh, I only hired you to do this, so we automatically get put into a box. So when it comes to even multifaceted creatives, people that just know how to do a lot of things, I think that can be very essential and very pivotal in the organization if you create a career pathway for
Mhm.
these people.
Mhm.
Okay, They've been working on this for 6 months. Now let's transition them into something else. And it's very project management like focused. If
Mhm.
organizations started looking at individuals with the lens of like, this person is a project, and they have a beginning and they have an end, and
Mhm.
everything in the middle is going to help them get to where they want to go based
Mhm.
on their skill set, based on their resumes, based on the work that they are producing. I think organizations definitely have to implement that into the onboarding. It has to implement that into just their pipeline for how they are, getting talent, how they are seeking out talent.
Mhm.
Do you want an employee that can work in all of these different departments, that can be cross functional? That way, you're building their skill set. Now they can become a project manager. Now they can become a leader. Now they can become this based
Mhm.
on their career path.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that companies definitely should lean into that and
Mhm.
really focus on developing that person as they come into the organization.
I love that. That's so good. And you have such a valid point because at the end of the day, innovation requires iteration. And so with having people being able to work in like a project style function, I think it allows for more innovation, right? Because then they work on a project, they get the outcomes of that project, they test it because that's important too, and then they decide if this works, cool, we'll keep doing it or keep, building on it. And if it doesn't work, let's move on to something different. So I don't see a need for people being in the same position every day for years and years and years doing the same work. I feel like I feel like that lacks innovation. So, um, any final thoughts you want to leave with the folks as we close out today's conversation?
Um, just to add one more piece of what you said,
Mhm.
that model will work for neurodivergent people, for people who have ADHD, for people who, you know, their mind just does this. It's like a computer. Having that model will allow companies to really nurture people with neurodivergent issues.
Mhm.
And when you talk about inclusivity and equity and diversity and things like that, you're setting yourself apart as an organization.
Mhm.
So my final thoughts are just speaking to just everyone involved in the workforce. When you think about these initiatives, when you are putting together these plans, when you are going after these projects, is your focus centered on people? And if it's not, bring in a consultant, someone who specializes in that. Bring in someone like myself or Sonia. Bring us in so that we can help you figure that out. Um, Also, just do your research. What do your employees actually want? What are they actually looking for? What do they actually desire from you as a leader, from you as an organization? And really go back to researching and developing the people, because that's where all of your information is going to come from. So yeah, I think that those are my final thoughts, just to really include the people in all of the aspects of the planning process and the building as well.
Yes, I agree. I mean, I know a lot of times when we talk, we're on the same page. So I think that was a perfect way to wrap up our conversation. So just want to say thank you to you. I just enjoy, us having these conversations. So I'm glad we were able to finally do it live. Oh, we got a comment. Somebody said, love that everyone will feel seen and heard. Yes, thank
Yes, that's
you.
the focus.
And so I want to say thank you to everybody who joined us live on LinkedIn, and just your engagement and sticking with us throughout this conversation. If you are catching this replay, whether on LinkedIn or on another platform, we will post this on YouTube as well. Share with us your thoughts about the future of work, emotional intelligence, and talent development. And also, too, we talked a lot about AI. So if you have thoughts about that, share it with us as well. And if you are looking to reach out to us, you can find Andrea on LinkedIn, Andrea Kelley. And then I am on LinkedIn as well, Sonia Daniels, PhD, and reach out to us so we can continue this conversation. And if you want to be a part of our community of young professionals that we are developing, please feel free to reach out to us and give us your contact information as we start to build out our contact list as well. But we hope that y'all have a beautiful rest of your Friday and a beautiful weekend. And we hope to be on LinkedIn Live again real soon. So y'all take care and have a good one.
Bye.